G'day everybody, I'm Scott Poynton and welcome to another podcast. And I have the great pleasure of talking today to Emma Gallagher. Emma Gallagher is in Victoria, a long way away from where I am here in Switzerland. And she's a cricket manager at Cricket Victoria. Good morning. Well, good morning for me, Em, and good afternoon for you. How are you?
Yeah, well, thanks, Scott. Thanks again for having me, and great to be here.
Em, tell us about what you do. You're cricket manager at Cricket Victoria at the southeastern part of Victoria. So tell us a bit about what you do.
Yeah, so in the southeast, or we like to call it Port Melbourne to Peru, I cover quite a large area. For those familiar with Victoria, cover the Gippsland area, which is quite a large part of the state and where I grew up. But also Mornington Peninsula, Casey Dandenong, which you'd be a bit familiar with, or at least some time ago, Scott, and then the Southeast Bayside as well. So, yeah, as I said, sort of Port Melbourne area. And my role is to work with clubs and associations to help deliver sustainable cricket opportunities to give, we call ourselves a sport for all cricket, a sport for all Australians, and give as many people as possible the opportunity to be involved in cricket in whatever that looks like for them. Cricket's given me a lot of opportunities, so it's nice to be able to try and give others the opportunities that I've had. Yeah,
so for our listeners overseas who look at cricket and everyone, whenever I talk about people with cricket, they say, that's that game that goes for 5 days and sometimes there's not a result, right? And you go, yeah, gee, that is ridiculous. They just don't understand. But when you grow up in Australia, of course, there's other forms of cricket now which are much faster than 5 days. But
yes,
yeah, it's just really Australia. We say it's Australia's number one sport. I'm not sure it is. I don't know. But obviously there's other sports in Australia that are prominent too. But it just seems that folk do love a game of cricket out there, don't we, the Australians? Just tell us a bit about cricket and how its place in the community, Em.
Yeah, it's interesting. Sort of going through uni, we talk about it, national identity along with sports. So, I mean, we like to think that we're the number one sport, but I think that national identity piece is probably the big piece. And some people would argue that Aussie rules football is the national sport, but it doesn't probably have the cross-section across the entirety of Australia that cricket does. And I think, you mentioned about test match cricket, which does tend to be the what people think of when they think of cricket. But for me, I think of backyard cricket on Christmas Eve with a few families that come together and enjoy a game, and we modify it a bit and play in pairs and playing on the beach with mates. And for me, that's kind of the image of summer in Australia, being in the beach with mates, boardies, the sand, the sun. And so for me, it's about actually, yes, we have our elite level and that can absolutely bring people together. And it's I have great memories of getting out of chores at home because the cricket was on and I was allowed to have 5 days where I sat and watched the Boxing Day test without any interruptions. Don't ask me how that happened. But so, there is that, and that brings people together. But I think, more importantly, for me, my cricket journey started in the backyard playing with mum, dad and my sisters. And, if you hit any apples off the tree, well, that was an absolute sin, and it was one less slice of apple pie for you when that time came around. So, that's for me the essence of what cricket is. Yes, there's the structured and yes, there's the elite level, but the times at home with family and friends are what it's really all about.
Yeah, look, I know from previous discussions how important that is for you. You mentioned you grew up out in Gippsland Way, and I happen to know you grew up in a very small town. So just tell us about, and I also know that your family's so important to you. You've got that lovely picture of your family there behind you as we're speaking, and just tell us through about that. It sounds like you had a really amazing upbringing out in the bush and playing sport and with a family that really cared for you, and just talk us through your early years.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in a small town called Swifts Creek. I still call it home, even though I'm fast approaching the same amount of time in Melbourne as what I spent there, but try to still get away with it. Small town. I grew up with grandparents who lived on a farm. So my dad was a teacher and my mum worked at the bank. So we weren't necessarily a farming family, but got enough exposure to it to appreciate that life and what that was. But I guess the key thing for me, my family was heavily involved in all aspects of the community. Like my mum's still on the cemetery committee. My dad's still president of the local footy association. They're involved in across the time, Dad's still involved in the Tambo Valley Race Club. Mum's still involved in the Parents and Friends Club at the school. So we grew up understanding the value of giving back. And that's where my love of sport really came, being at the football netball club every weekend over winter and some weeknights when Dad was marking the ground. And you saw the work that went into it, but you saw what you got back. Like some of our closest family friends were friends that we spent time with while we were volunteering for these organisations and these community groups. And you saw, some of my favourite times were times when, we were getting together and doing stuff for the community. And then you saw the community come together. You have farmers who are working dawn till dusk most of the time, and the only time they come together is for that footy match or the netball match on the weekend. And I just really saw the value of that, bringing people together, and loved that from a young age. And my sister and I'm a twin. They couldn't separate us, but we were the youngest winners of the local football netball club's club person award. And, that was, 10 plus years ago now. And I still think about that with enormous amount of pride. And so, yeah, that was really the start, I guess, of the journey for me, in terms of just a massive respect for the power that sport can have, with a healthy understanding that sport's not the only thing that can do that, but understanding the power that it does have. It gave me access to, I guess, my family weren't cricket playing family, but my dad was, as I said, a teacher at the local school. So when the cricket manager at the time, so the person that had the role that I have now, came to our school and helped run a program and sort of saw something in me and said to my dad, hey, she should play cricket. And keeping in mind, this was a time when cricket was very much a male thing. There were very few opportunities for women, but he said, he was a bit ahead of his time and said, hey, Emma should really have a crack at this. And sort of my mum and dad quit playing tennis the next year so that they could take me and my sister down, and out. My home club was an hour away. And they made that commitment to give us that opportunity. And from there, I had opportunities in rep teams and going down to Melbourne and meeting. To give you some perspective, like I was in a school that had 100 kids max. Like now it's a P to 12 and there's 100 kids across both, I think. So you were kind of friends with who you had to be friends with. And as someone who was, I guess, a little bit different growing up, cricket gave me an opportunity to find a space where I could be valued for me. And I got to meet people who were maybe a bit more like me and felt a little less isolated, I suppose, and got opportunities in leadership, which, I really wanted, but perhaps wasn't getting elsewhere. And so gained confidence in that. And yeah, I guess all of that mixed in together has really played a massive part in who I am today and why I am where I am today. Yeah.
I can see that. And isn't that amazing? Because as you say, I'm a few years older than you, but I remember when I grew up in Cranbourne, where you now, one of your areas, and cricket, we didn't see girls at cricket. And we had one young lass play Aussie rules with us, and she got to 12 years old and she was quietly suggested to go and do something else. And it was such a shame because she was really part of the team and suddenly she wasn't there anymore. And we saw her at school and said, what happened?
Yeah.
Well, they just told me I couldn't play anymore because, of course, she was developing and going through puberty. And they said, no, not appropriate. We're not having you out there in the field. And, well,
it's phenomenal, isn't it?
I know.
Like I remember that moment as a kid where I loved footy. Did Auskick. Dad ran the Auskick Centre. I used to carry, I had this Essendon Bombers woolen footy jumper
not
was
Collingwood,
about.
Not Collingwood?
No, don't tell me you're a Collingwood supporter. I had such high esteem for you.
My dad played for him.
I had this massive jumper that was, when you used to get them 10 sizes too big so you'd go into it and it last longer. So I'd walk around in this footy jumper that was more like a dress, and I wouldn't be seen dead in a dress at this stage, by the way, carrying my footy around everywhere. And had to make that decision where Mum said, you could play footy, but then what happens when you get to 12? You're not allowed to play anymore. You won't have had the experience in netball, so you might have trouble breaking into the netball team. So all your friends will be playing that. What are you going to do? So like as at that age, then making that decision to say, okay, I'm not going to do the thing that I really love. I grew to love netball, and don't get me wrong, it's a fantastic sport and I still enjoy playing it now. But as a kid, making that decision to go, what I really want to do is this, but people are telling me that's not where I belong. And that want isn't, normal.
Yeah, something wrong with you.
So it's an interesting, and it's great to see that that's less of the case now. There's still elements of it, of course, but and like I said, I was extremely lucky, and that's probably where my love of cricket is so big, because they did give me that opportunity, and I didn't realise at the time. So I went and played for this cricket club, Brooklyn Cricket Club, and got nominated for my last 2 years in the under 16s, I think it was, as captain. And this was a group of boys who, like, I didn't go to school with them. They only knew me from playing cricket, and they nominated me and didn't think any differently of it as their captain for 2 years, which, like, at the time I was like, yeah, great. Like, that's really nice. But it wasn't until later on when I start hearing about horror stories that people I've met further down the line who didn't get opportunities. And I go, wow, I was so lucky to have fallen into such a supportive community and a supportive club that, as I said, really allowed me to thrive and feel like a place where I really felt like I belonged and was at my best. So, yeah, I just feel so lucky that I had that through cricket. And as I say, hoping now to be able to influence so that other people have those opportunities too.
Yeah, well, I know you're doing that, from our previous discussions and, the work that you're doing out there. And, one of the things we talk about is this idea of the wellbeing ladder. And, you just touched on a number of things there about how, doing something that you really love, like you really love the footy and suddenly you couldn't do that. But, how, you're really blessed to find yourself into that community where they were. I mean, imagine that, where group of 16-year-old lads just nominated you as captain. Like, it's just amazing. And that's great. And as you say, there's plenty of other stories to the contrary. And you described how, cricket's helped you develop your, leadership skills and things like that. Here you are now in your work. And it just strikes me that just through our discussions that you've got this foundation in understanding, when you're feeling well and when you can do things and when you're perhaps not feeling so well, and you're understanding this, oscillations up and down this well-being ladder, as I call it, and just interested in your thoughts and your approach to that. And because I know that you have to travel long distances, as you say, what is it, Paran to Peru?
Port Melbourne to Peru.
Port Melbourne to Peru. It's everything east of Port Melbourne, and that's a huge area, and a lot of time in cars and hotels and things away from home, and you've got to manage your well-being. And just tell us about that. I mean, can I ask you, if not too rude a question, how old are you, Em?
32.
So 32, to me, of course, that's, for me, that's very young. But it strikes me, for one so young, you've got a bit of wisdom there about feeling, we talk about physical well-being, mental well-being, let's add on emotional well-being and, spiritual well-being too. And that mean religion. It's just mean, this connection to yourself and stuff like that. Why I was so excited to talk to you and have this discussion is it just strikes me that you're aware of all of these things and they're present for you in your day, and you can feel when you may be pushing boundaries on those areas. And sometimes you say, well, I got to do that. That's just the job, or I need to push through. And other times you'll say, I need to take a moment. I need to take a moment. And, you mentioned when we were talking earlier about, going into lockdown was actually in some ways for you a bit of a relief because you've been burning the candle. And just share us your thoughts on all that, Em, and how do you approach that? Because I think there's wisdom in what you're doing that could be valuable for others.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. It's certainly been a long time in the making. It's not something that happened overnight, and I feel it's a place that I've really only got to in the last 18 months. And obviously it's something that continues to evolve, and I guess I just try to take bits and pieces on all the time. I've always got something in the back of my mind of this is what I'm working on at the moment. But in terms of how I've got to this position, I think it's interesting you touched on spiritual wellbeing, for example. I'm not a religious person, but when I was at university, I was able to be part of a National Student Leadership Forum, it was called, and that was based, I think it had the tagline faith and values, or leadership with faith and values, or something to that extent. And a lot of people who started that did get those elements from religion, but in hearing from a lot of different people at that event, probably being able to pare it back and go, yes, for them it's religion, but what is it about religion that gives them the faith and the values, or what are the faith and the values that they get out of that? And sort of realizing that I had those same values and maybe faith in a different way without having the religion, and also understanding that's importance as a base in leadership. So, for example, and I think a lot of that comes from sport for me. Like, I kind of, I don't know if I listened to a podcast by comedian Will Anderson called Willosophy, and he asked guests about if they have a philosophy, life, work, whatever. And I think about that a lot, and especially in the lockdown that we had, and with everything around coronavirus. And, there can be so much division at the moment. We're seeing that between New South Wales and Victoria, where we're going, you're not in a proper lockdown, and they're just sitting there going, hey, we just need a bit of care at the moment. We're really struggling here. So I guess for me, my take on that and what I think is probably my philosophy is that life is a team game. And the components of that, I have it up on my wall to keep reminding me, but things like control the controllables, supporting your teammates, backing your leaders to an extent, continuous learning, having respect for the people, your opposition and your teammates and all those kind of things. And your team's only as strong as the relationship I think you have amongst each other and those kind of things. So I guess there's little bits and pieces that I've taken along the way. The other fantastic things that have probably growing up in the country, I think you have some experiences that help with that. But also what that has meant is that I moved away from home at 18, and you're thrown into this deep, wide world, and you got to figure it out, which can be really challenging. But at the same time, probably one thing that I've learned, very recently is I used to be a real perfectionist. And it's something that I probably still fight at the moment, if I'm honest. But I had a secondment for work over to Japan Cricket Association for 3 weeks, had an extra 2 weeks there just traveling around. And it was honestly a life changer for me, Scott. And one of the big things I took out of that was the importance of mistakes.
Yeah.
That's how we learn.
Right.
And that was a huge thing for me. I have been terrible, that idea of the fear of failure, or I don't know if you've seen with the Olympic coverage, I don't know if you have the same ads. There's some ads here that are talking about you don't have to be amazing to start, but you have to start to be amazing.
Right.
And that's all the same thing for me, where when I was over in Japan, I really wanted to try and communicate with people, and English, there's certainly an element of English over there, but it's not.
It's pretty
embedded,
limited.
I would say.
It's pretty limited. I've been to Japan a few times with work, and they don't have a lot of English as a rule.
No. To give you some context, I remember they were saying if I wanted a job in the schools over there, they'd take an English teacher in a heartbeat, because at the moment they teach, their English textbooks are in Japanese. So, but I guess the learning I took was, for me to learn the language, I had to try, fail, get feedback, work on that feedback, try again, and follow that process until I got it. And I don't know why that was the thing that made it click for me. And maybe it was the headspace that I was in. I was really relaxed, all those kind of things. I'd put away my volunteer commitments. I turned off my emails. I had very limited connection to work. Maybe I was just in the right headspace, but yeah, that massively clicked for me. And that probably combined with the role that I took on at Cricket Victoria soon after that, and a few of my colleagues would hear me saying this a lot at the moment, is done is better than perfect.
Yeah.
And I know I'm throwing a lot of cliches around here,
that's
but
all right.
that's
helpful,
kind of what clicks for me, I guess.
Yeah.
Where if something comes up, I'll remind myself, done is better than perfect. And I had this job. The job was, it was called participation officer. And part of it was running these massive events for schools. And the first one some of them could be you might have 60 kids and, 5 grounds that you had to organise games on. But this first event I did had over 500 kids. Ooh. We had 22 grounds that we were
that was your first event.
We made little grounds on we had 3 ovals, and you make little modified grounds on them. We had 22 of them we were managing, 10 schools, so buses are coming in at different times. Everyone's wanting to know where they're fixtured. Some school has bought 5 teams when they said they're only going to bring 4, all of these kind of things. And it's just impossible to do that perfectly.
I reckon.
And in fact, if you do it perfectly and you're not flexible, you're in real trouble because it's harder to adapt.
Right.
So I just remember that was the first one I did. So after that, it was like,
dived in big.
I can do anything from here. Like,
I reckon.
I can do whatever. Because you know what? It doesn't matter. Because I was the kind of person that would have spent 2 days in the lead up preparing to try and get it perfect. And I did for that first event. And it just all went out the window on that day.
Within about 5 minutes, I suspect.
Minus 5 minutes. Like, you get a phone call saying, we're going to be 10 minutes late. Awesome. Fantastic. Okay, great. Now what do we do? So like that was another, and all of this stuff, like that was such a key time. And now I think about it, what was that? That was actually like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. I would have told you too. But there was, just these couple of things that just happened at the right time for me, and that all came together. And I think I'm really lucky in that the way my mind works, I'm really good at connecting ideas and seeing how things link up. And I guess those things all happening at the same time, all kind of triggered something in me that has led to perhaps me being in the thing that I had to learn after that was patience, where I was kind of sitting there going, I think I've got these capabilities and I want to be able to demonstrate them now. And that's not how it works. But I feel like maybe lockdown has helped me with that one, and I'm in a pretty good space now. So I don't know if that completely answers your question, but hopefully it gives a few insights.
Yeah, I think it does. And the other thing that's interesting for me is, you mentioned being in Japan when you had that really clear, calm headspace, and no emails, everything was turned off, and it gave you that opportunity to, as you say, have that life-changing sort of revelation. And of course, I often speak about the value of people finding that headspace, or just that calm, just to let the brain turn off a bit. And, you were just saying, this is how my head works and things like that. Well, just share for me a bit, if you can. I guess I would call it, rather than how your head works, how does your body work? Like, when you feel resonance and dissonance, it generally don't feel it in your head. You feel it in your gut, like something just doesn't feel right. And it seems to me that this is where our values come from. And I try and encourage people to, what I say, feel first, then think. Like, how does it feel? And if you're feeling something's not right, I call that dissonance. And if you're feeling like, oh, this is terrific, this feels just great, and you often can't actually explain. You can't actually say, look, this is why it feels good, but I'm just loving this. It's a bit like your cricket when you were young. It just felt great, right? And it's only later that you might be able to say, oh, that was because there was a sense of community. And you at the moment, you can't even put your finger on it because it's maybe the experience is too big for you, and you need to be able to look back on it. Do you find that, you feel this stuff somewhere in your body, and then your brain can kick in and say, right, okay, so now we need to do X, Y, and Z. Do you find that, Em, in the way you go about life?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Again, it's a learning that comes through experience. So to take you back to that Japan example, the key one was actually not work. It was actually a cricket club. At the time I was secretary. I'd been president. I'd been there for 4 or 5 years, and the motto at the club was, if you don't know, ask Gags. So Gags is my nickname.
Right.
And I probably got really caught up in that they need me and like it won't work without me. So actually turning those emails off and going, oh, hey, the world actually keeps spinning here. Like, do you know what? I'm actually not the center of the universe, and things will continue without me. So that was a massive one, to just a reminder to, and I kind of think of that example anytime that I sit here and go, oh, no, but I have to do this. No, you have a choice, and you don't have to. Like, I'm under no illusions. I'm a cricket manager. I'm not saving lives. Like, that's not to say I don't see the value in what I do, but like, there's not lives at stake. So that was the key one there. And in terms of to link that into what you're saying about the body, the freedom that I felt, and probably the more consistent feeling of joy, I think at the cricket club, I remember thinking, like, because I was a person that knew everything and did everything, I also was a person that was the responsible one a lot of the time. And I remember being like, I am a person that can be really serious, and I take responsibilities really seriously. And that's part of my leadership style to an extent. But I'm also generally a fun person. And I remember thinking, gee, I hate that there's kids coming into this club who think I'm this really serious. Like, I remember like joking at one point and kids being like, oh, Gags is funny. It's like, yeah, I am. I promise. Like, I am actually a fun person who really likes a laugh.
Yeah.
So like getting over to Japan and just being like, woo, how good. Like, I remember being in the back of a speedboat at one point, like just on this Amano Hashide. Like it's kind of this resort location and just being like, how good is life? And just like literally like just yelling, woohoo, into the wind.
Yeah.
And I think, for me, when you talk about feeling it in your body, if I'm not feeling a sense of joy and fun and, for me in lockdown, for example, that comes out in the form of dancing in the kitchen like an absolute idiot. Like if I'm feeling a bit stressed or something.
We need a GoPro.
No one needs to see that. But sometimes that's my switch off thing to like be like, right, the workday has ended, or especially on a Friday, right, turning on music, dancing around, or even if I just feel myself getting tight and anxious after a frustrating meeting or a draining conversation. So, right, I need to take 5 minutes. I'm feeling really anxious and uptight and even angry. I don't think I'm a naturally angry person. Then I go, right, I'm not feeling like me. This is not right. And the other thing, so it's like turn some music on for 5 minutes and just dance around. That feels better. My head's a bit clearer.
Getting in your body.
Ready to go again.
Getting in your body, yeah.
Yeah. And so the other thing I think, so there's a couple of triggers there. Feeling of, as I said, that idea that it has to be me. I have to do this. No, if I'm feeling that, then that's a red flag. It's like no, the world will survive. And the other one is like actually feeling it, like as you say, whether it's a tightening of the gut or feeling anxious or being angry. Those kind of things, feeling those. The other one is I actually got to this point. I'd been doing so well and I was so proud of myself through lockdown where I felt like I'd managed it really well and had really good self-care. I got to a point just before lockdown 5.0 actually where I was in the office for probably the third time in the space of 6 months, 18 months even, a handful of times. And I got in and I was looking around because I was looking for a colleague who I was meant to be meeting, but like really just like, buzzing around sort of thing. And a couple of people said to me, hey, are you okay? Like you look really flustered. And I went, yes, yep, I am flustered. Mm. And that was exactly the word I needed to hear. And I guess, and exactly the word to describe my thoughts were scattered.
Right.
And so I think that's the other thing. If I feel like my thoughts are scattered, I know that I need to take a breath and take some time to do something logical. So that night when I got home, I've just bought a unit. So I got home and I literally drew out a plan of the house and did some measurements and wrote a list of things that I want to do before I move in. It's logical, it's process, it's not cricket, really importantly. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't on a screen.
Right.
So.
And you're using your hand to do drawings and sort of.
Yeah, like I started off doing it on my computer on like an Excel doc. I was like, no, actually this is a great opportunity to do something that's not on a computer. Mm. And that, exactly, that I was doing with my own hand. That was, I could do out in the sun in the kitchen. Yeah. Which we haven't had a lot of in Melbourne, but there happened to be a bit of sun that day. Mm. So there's a few triggers that I feel, and I think that it just comes from experience. But also, I think I've been fortunate to have people around me who've helped with that. Like I said, those people in the office went, "You seem flustered," and knew that was not a natural state for me. And so that was really important to have people saying that and going, "Hey, can we help? What do you need?" And me going, but not forcing it either. I was able to say to them, no, you're right. I am flustered. I'm a bit overwhelmed at the moment. I've got these things going on. It's really helpful just telling you this, but I know what I need to do. And if I need your help, I will let you know, but I will be okay. that was really beneficial.
Really important.
And I should point out as well, I saw I started seeing a psychologist probably just before coronavirus, and there was elements of that which have helped me get to this point too. Breathing into where you're feeling your anxiety and figuring out where that comes from and those kind of things. So that all comes into it as well.
Had a bit of a journey there, Em, and a really interesting one. But what a gift for those colleagues to be able to say that. But also they've been able to say it because they knew you were open to the question as well, right? So I know people who you wouldn't never ask that to because you probably get your head bitten off and told to bugger off, or, so, that sounds like a really healthy relationship there that people, I know that you ask people those questions too. So not just self-care, but comes back to your spirit of community, I think, and just looking after each other, right?
Yeah, it's a really good point. I think that's another learning I've had too. There's so much going. There's no simple answers, are there? It's all intertwined, but coming to that realization of people won't ask you for help if you don't ask for help yourself.
Right.
Like, it's not a matter of we need each other the same amount. Like, I've got some fantastic friends who've been they're basically sort of my family down in Melbourne. We've got a couple of young kids, similar thing. Like, sometimes I go over there for dinner to hang out with kids because I think kids are such a great example of, play and joy and just that innocent kind of, they don't know what's going on in the world. They just want to, play with the dollhouse for 10 minutes or do whatever. So coming to go, you know what, sometimes they'll need me and sometimes I'll need them. And it doesn't matter if that doesn't balance out exactly equally. But the fact that they know I'll tell them when I need help makes them more likely to ask for help from me.
Yeah.
And that gives me great joy helping other people. So that was another. I was like, why don't people, I'm trying my best to show people that I care and, I want to help people. Why aren't people coming to me? Well, because I wasn't opening myself up to them. It's
absolutely right. I talk about that with a lot of people. People come to me because of my sustainability work and they say, how do we be sustainability people? And how did you get these big companies to do all these changes? And I'm like, you got everything you need. You don't need to go off and do a master's in X, Y, or Z. Look, go and do that. Like, there's nothing wrong with doing that. You'll learn a lot of new knowledge. But you were born with everything you need. And that is, you just need to be yourself. And if you go into a dark room with a stressed out CEO and the leadership team, they've got NGOs hanging off their building, they don't know what to do. They're bunkered down. They don't need a list of 10 things. They need calm. And they need it's a bit like, just breathe out, and so how did you do it? Well, I sat with them a while. I just sat with them. And when they asked me how I was going, I told them I was a bit tired. I just got off the plane. How's the family? Yeah. And so they started, I was in serious, intense business meetings, but they felt they could ask me personal things. And I would ask them, how's the kids? How's it going? And suddenly it just took the discussion to a different place. And they, and this would go on. And then they'd start talking about the problem, which was, the NGO campaign that was raging against them, often, and I would say pretty much always, with good reason. Like these were companies that were involved in not so great environmental practices and sometimes human rights abuses. They didn't set out to do that. It was just the way things happened. And so the NGO campaigns were strong and were hard hitting, and they'd get stressed about it. But just sitting with them and being yourself. Like, people say, how do you do it? Well, you just be yourself. What do you mean? Well, you did all this education. Well, yeah, I did, but I didn't need to. You just need to learn to be yourself. Well, what does that mean? Well, that's the big work. The biggest work is getting you to understand who you are and your triggers. And as you've said a couple of times, Em, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of work, a lot of lessons here, and it's never ending. And here I am, I'm 57. You think, wow, geez, I should have that sorted out by now. But no, I still rise to anger, and I get frustrated at things. I'm like, what are you doing? What are you doing with that? And well, it may be because you didn't sleep so well the last few nights, and you just, I don't know. So yeah, that journey of, as you say, to yourself, and it just resonates so much with me because I was able to be myself. It meant that they could be themselves. And they weren't people that got out every morning and said, how many orangutans can we kill today? It happened as a consequence of the way they were running their business. And when they start saying, well, we don't want to be linked to that, like, right, okay, so how do we find our way out of this dark place? Mm. And they navigated their own journey. And I was just, I was just there with them, giving them that confidence to do it. That's the secret, just being yourself and understanding what you need too. I think you've hit the nail on the head. I really do. And I think, as you say, it's a never-ending journey. But I just want to come back to one thing you said, Em, and it's absolutely fascinating too. And, you said, you said it a couple of times, I'm not saving lives. And I'm going to beg to differ with you there because it comes back to what you said earlier. It's not just sport. I think sport's obviously really important. I think it does great things for our body, and we get fit and healthy. We get ourselves injured at times too, and there's a learning experience there, right? But just come back to your early life in Swifts Creek and that sense of community. And I wonder how many. I know you're not just working with kids. But you do a lot with kids cricket. And there's a diversity of communities there that are involved in sport and cricket. Deaf community, blind community, Indigenous cricket, LGBTQ and all those things that look, I'm just wondering, and you mentioned that, you were this young lass who felt a bit out of sorts and you went off and cricket helped you. I wonder if you can imagine how many kids and just people, not just kids, who are finding a sense of community through the work you're doing and what that does for their life. Have you reflected a bit on that?
Yeah, and I guess that's why I say that, the belief in the power of what sport can do and what cricket can do is definitely there. I guess it's keeping that sense of being grounded. And yeah, I absolutely believe that. And I see it. I see it, especially now we've got these cricket competitions that associations are running now, which we haven't had before, and watching, kids be inspired because they're seeing their mum go out and play cricket now, and that's not something that, watching the kid run up and be like, "Go, mum," and you're like, right, where
this is happening,
and the mum coming off and going, "Wow, like I did that," and feeling, great about it. Like they might have been around cricket clubs their whole life, but they've been out
the back making the sandwiches, right?
Yeah, they've never considered that playing something that they could do, and then all of a sudden that's made available to them. And like I said, I learned so many values out of cricket, leadership, being part of a team. I think cricket in particular, like obviously sport in general can do it, but cricket has so many elements of that where, literally you can help your teammate to be better, and then that makes you better as a team. And, there's all sorts of elements to it. But so, yeah, I absolutely see that. I guess the point I make is purely around, I'm not the be-all and end-all in that. My role isn't the be-all and end-all in that. I think arts can do a great job at those kind of things as well. It's not just sport. So it's I guess, keeping the mindset that, yeah, I absolutely, and that's why I'm proud to work at Cricket Victoria and proud to work in sport, because I do believe we have an impact in that, and we do have the opportunity to generally contribute to communities by helping them provide these sporting clubs and helping them to run them, sustainably and in a way that adds to people's lives rather than burning them out every 12 months if they're president or secretary or whatever, which can be big jobs. So, yeah, I absolutely believe in what I do and feel like I contribute, but I'm also always conscious of the fact that, as I said, that can come through other methods, other sports or other things like, and I think like esports even, like I think people underestimate the opportunities in there to do the same thing. As I said, arts, I'm just fortunate that in Australia we seem to value sports above anything else. So there's a job available to me in this space. But I think I take nothing away from what you say there, and I absolutely believe that. But I guess it's important for me that I maintain a bit of perspective and don't get ahead of myself too much.
Yeah. No, you got your feet in the ground there. Humility, is the word that springs to mind. And you just know your place. And, yeah, you're not a paramedic or anything going out there, in the front.
I've got a sister who's a doctor and one who's an occupational therapist. Like, I'm under no illusions.
Yeah, no, but that's right. And maybe, yeah, of course, their job is frontline, healthcare and looking after people who are ill in this moment. But the sort of things that you're doing are perhaps more long-term and quieter and maybe in the background, and that sense of well-being that people can get, as you say, coming off the field, right? And
again, that comes back to seeing that in my parents. Like my dad's a teacher and he was often the only male teacher at the school with kids that might have sort of have come from different family dynamics or might not know their dad. And I saw him being a really important father figure for kids. And he coached the footy a lot. So like, again, I'd see kids really looking up to him as a role model and learning things from him in that capacity. And my mum, like, as a kid, I idolized my dad because he was, what we're taught about as being leadership. He was at the front. He was the one making the speeches. And I still have massive respect for my dad and love him to bits, and am so grateful for the lessons that he showed me and the path that he forged for me. But the older I get, the more I appreciate the role that my mum played, because she was the one in the background and probably playing that role that, I remember she made a cake for my friend for her 18th birthday when we were in year 12 because she wasn't sure if her family would have one for her. And, little things like that where I go, she wouldn't probably consider herself as a leader, but, Dad could only do the things that he did because of the things that she did. And, and she had her own contributions to the community. As I said, stuff like being on the cemetery committee. It's not something that anyone could class as a glamorous job or that many people might even be aware is something that happens.
Right.
But she does it. She quietly goes about it. She gets stuff done. And sometimes she makes real changes on those committees and no one knows about it, and she doesn't mind. So again, that's something where I kind of sit here and go, now I try and remind myself that, because I've probably historically been someone who, as I said, wanted to be like my dad, and there's nothing against that. Like, I love getting up in front of a crowd and making a speech and having my voice heard and being the leader from the front, but also taking my turn at the back and knowing that just because people don't know about the impact that you're making doesn't make it any less.
Spot on. Em, you're 32. You've got a long life ahead of you, we all hope. And where do you think, difficult question. I always like to frame this a different way, but it always comes out like this. Like, where do you think you're going to be? It's a stupid cliched question. Where are you going to be in 10 years' time, Em? And it's like, well, not where you're going to be, but what do you think you might be doing as your life unfolds? Like, what's your aspirations?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? That I don't mind the question, but I usually probably frame my answer a bit differently in that I try not to think about it too much, to be honest. Like, it's a bit like the lockdown and the coronavirus. Like, I don't follow the case numbers much. And, people going, oh, when do you think the lockdown will end? It was like, the reality is I don't know. And there's so many things outside of my control that impact it that, yeah, I could rack my brain thinking about it and I could take a guess, but it's pretty wasted thinking time, I reckon. So I probably feel a bit the same. Like, where I've got to today, there's no way I could have predicted that 10 years ago or 20 years ago, and nor could I have predicted the journey I've taken to get here. Oh, there you go, journey. We've got it in. Everyone take a drink.
Exactly.
But so I kind of go, I've got where I am by taking opportunities and being open to them and saying yes at the right time and being myself, as you said, and being kind to people and sort of playing the long game that way, I guess. So any specific aspirations? No, not really. But I guess, yeah, I guess I want to continue to grow and I hope that, the things that I value in 10 years' time are similar, but maybe better versions of what I believe now. Like, as long as I'm growing as a person and continuing to contribute to whatever community that I'm a part of, and continuing to make probably, those people in the pictures behind me that you pointed out before, my family. And I've got a picture on my fridge of me as about probably 7 or 8 year old. Like, as long as I'm making that little kid proud and as long as I'm making these people behind me proud, then I think I'm doing okay.
I think you are. I know you are. It comes to me with great certainty. I think you're doing amazing things, and I think your approach is enlightening and wise and very wise. And I've said to you before, I think you're doing great things in the world. I really do, Em. And you'll never know. You'll never know the little child who goes home at night after one of your events and lies down in bed and thinks, that was terrific. You'll never know that little kid will never write you an email or, come up to you at the next event and say, Em, I just want to tell you that was really great. They won't do it, but you'll see the smile on their face and what impact that you will have on that small child's life because you gave them a moment of joy. And sometimes it can be a moment. It can be a fleeting moment. I mean, you know, from your childhood, you know, you just, there's moments, isn't there? Little moments we say, that was great. And I remember that moment sitting in the car with my dad, or I remember that moment when I looked into my mum's eyes. And these are snippets that just stay with you. And my sense is that you're providing a lot of those moments for people. And I often think of kids. I remember once my little bloke played cricket here. We set up a cricket club here in Switzerland, and I bought him a picture of Mike Hussey. And Mike Hussey is a famous Test cricketer in Australia. For those who don't know much about cricket, and you can get it off the Cricket Australia website. And we framed it up, and there it was on his desk, and it had been electronically signed, like "Go for it, Ali" or something like that. And I went into his room one day, and he sort of glazed eyes looking at that picture. I said, "What are you thinking, mate?" And he said, "When I grow up, I want to be like him." And I'm like, golly, Mike Hussey never knows about that little kid who's having ambitions. And it wasn't just because Mike Hussey was a great cricketer. It was because he was a great person. And it was when he got interviewed, he spoke humbly, and he was very clearly a part of the team. And I'm thinking, I get goosebumps thinking about it, to be honest with you. And I think that's the stuff you're doing. And I think that, that's why I wanted to talk to you. And I just think that, the work that you, and we talked earlier in another podcast to Josh Beaumont, hope to get Emma Staples on board for another conversation. These are all Cricket Victoria people. It's a service position. You're doing something for the community. So I'm very chuffed and thrilled to be able to talk to you today, Em. And I want to thank you for coming on and sharing a bit about your life and a bit about your way, because I think it is a way. I think you've got a way of living that adds a lot of value to the people around you. So good on you.
Oh, thanks very much. Really appreciate those kind words. And it's certainly not perfect, and you only get a snippet of it in this, I suppose. There's plenty of, you make mistakes along the way and hopefully learn from them. But, if I can share something that helps others, then I really appreciate having the opportunity to do that. And hopefully I can continue to go along the right track. And, really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you, Scott.
Thanks very much for talking to us. And we look forward to hearing about how you're going there in the future. I reckon we might circle back in some time and have another chat to hear how you're going.
Sounds good.
Good on you, Em. Thanks very much.